The Curiosity rover is looking for evidence of life in other organic molecules. We hope that we'll be able to say one way or the other fairly soon whether or not there has been any life in Mars's past. The atmosphere is enriched in the heavy isotopes of oxygen, carbon, and hydrogen. Means that the Martian atmosphere has certainly been lost, or most of Mars's atmosphere has been lost. The idea of this being a sudden event.
What was peculiar was once we identified the Mars rocks, they were highly depleted in potassium and thorium and uranium. So it's as if there is a radioactive layer on the top surface of Mars.
The Mars Curiosity rover found that the abundance of xenon-129 is much higher than what we see here on Earth. What process is creating this enhanced abundance of xenon?
So that's where the xenon-129 in the Earth's atmosphere comes from. It comes from hydrogen bombs being set off in open air.
Xenon-129 is the byproduct of nuclear weapon explosions.
So if the xenon spectrum does not resemble a thermal fusion spectrum, as it turns out, it resembles a portion of the Earth's atmosphere that has been present since 1945.
The presence of certain elements on Mars indicate that there was a nuclear explosion or explosions on the surface of Mars at some point in the planet's history.
So the effects are consistent with a mid-air thermonuclear explosion with fission boosting of enormous yield. That's what it's consistent with.
I have shown this to several nuclear weapons experts, and they have affirmed that this is nuclear weapon signature. There is no other process that can create such a xenon spectrum.
Hey, so, I had my whole green screen set up. I had just, lights and all these things, and then nothing was working. It didn't feel right. So I just grabbed my guitar. I was just kind of thinking while I was playing that, are there other intelligences that could appreciate music? Like something beyond humans? I'm going to be honest. This episode is long overdue. And it's basically about what the Martians may have looked like if there were such a thing as Martians back in Mars. And the reason why it's such an overlooked episode, the reason why I decided not to publish it initially, is because of the speculative nature of this episode. I really do try to be credible with my channel. I try to bring the best possible information that I can. I'm not going to be perfect, but I try to do the best I can. I don't like the idea of doing clickbait. And so this felt a little bit clickbaity, even though whatever it is that I saw, it wasn't people might think it was a dream. It was more like a form of a vision. But I don't know if the people would believe me that this was, they might think I was just dreaming. They're like, well, here's a guy making an episode about what Martians look like while he's dreaming. But then something happened. I read a file. You might have heard about this, the May 1984 CIA file regarding remote viewers in the Martians. And boy, do I wish I had actually published that episode before, because I could not believe the descriptions that I read. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go over an article, and then I'm going to show you the drawings that I made, and we're going to compare, and you can make your own judgment as to whether you think this is something that could be legitimate or not. So just to kind of quickly go over the vision that I had. Now, the reason why I call it a vision here, I'm going to put this guy down. The reason why I call it a vision is because I was dreaming, and then partway in my dream, I became fully conscious. Call it a full-blown lucid dream. And then when I realized I was conscious, but still in the dream state, a sort of half dream state, I kind of decided to kind of play around, just see what I can do. And one of the first thoughts that I had is, I wonder if I can figure out what the pyramids are all about. Like, not just why they are here or how they were initially created, but what is their function? And the moment that I had this thought, remember, I was conscious, just kind of in this lucid dream state. The moment that I had this thought, I was not thrown back to Egypt or I didn't go to the Mayan Empire. I ended up going to Mars. And this was really strange because it wasn't something I was expecting. Like, I've heard about Cydonia, but this isn't a thought that was just kind of on the top of my head. But there I was in Mars, inside a pyramid, and then I see beings, Martians, if you want to call it that. So I'm just going to kind of describe to you what I saw. These Martians were really tall, they were really skinny, and they had 4 fingers. That's one of the things that I remember. Really long, skinny fingers. And they had this unusually long neck, like I would say twice the neck of a human. And one thing that really stood out to me is that they kind of looked humanish, but they were quintessentially very different from us. So I would even be hard-pressed to conclude that we do indeed share DNA. I don't know. But what I saw was these long humanoid-like beings, very, very tall, very, very skinny, and one of the most pronounced features that I remember is their skin, because their skin had these deep folds, like just imagine like long neck with fold after fold after fold. And it looked very thick, like it had like thick leathery type skin. And to top it off, it was like pure white. And I'm not talking about like white, like human skin white. I'm talking about like pure white, like the color white. And they had these almond-shaped eyes that were pure black. They didn't have ears, or I should say they did. It looked like little holes inside their head. And they had this really weird, like their face was similar to us in the sense that they had eyes, nose, they had a really long, like, I don't want to say Julia Roberts type mouth, but you can kind of imagine what I'm talking about. This very long mouth with thin lips. And then what was really interesting about their face is not was their head way more elongated, like it was a lot longer vertically than our heads, but they had this like unusual space between their upper lip and their nose. Like think about like almost twice the size of the space that you see in a human. So that was something that I remember very distinctly. And these beings were basically wearing a very strange garment, clothes, if you want to call it. It was like a very thin, kind of silky, black type of garment that was hooded. These beings were just kind of walking around. Like they were just walking in circles inside the pyramid. And inside the pyramid, I mean, it didn't look that much different than what you think the Pyramid of Giza might look like somewhere like the King's Chamber, but it was way bigger, like way wider. And it was as if they were doing some kind of ritual, but I couldn't tell, and they were kind of gurgling, like, kind of humming, like you think Buddhist monks hum, but they had like a gurgly type of voice. And it was a very, very vivid, strong experience. I felt like I was there forever, even though I probably was not, but the feeling was that I got a lot of details from this experience. What really struck me is that there were these humanoid tall creatures that looked very feeble, chilling inside a pyramid and doing some kind of circular ritual, almost as if it's like Wicca magic or something like that. But I don't know what they were doing. They were just going in circles. And so you might be like, well, dude, this is just bullshit, man. Like, you just dreamt all of this. Yeah, but the thing is, when I looked at the CIA file, this document that came out recently that was declassified regarding a remote viewer who was given coordinates, and they didn't even say that the coordinates were necessarily for Mars. But still, the guy actually ended up going to Mars in his trip and ended up experiencing these long, humanoid, thin creatures with strange clothes and pyramids. Ladies and gentlemen, I kid you not, I'm gonna go ahead and go through this article. I'm gonna show you some of the pictures that I drew months and months ago. And basically, I guess you can make up your own mind as to whether this might have been a real experience or just an unusual coincidence. All right, so let's take a look at this article by Slate.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have Slate.com over here. A Martian state of mind. Did the CIA really astrally project to Mars in 1984? We asked a psychic spy. I don't know, have you, ladies and gentlemen, ever astrally projected? But I think lucid dream and astral projection are a little bit different. Anyways, getting to the article. So this article, maybe some of you may have heard about this story, about this 1984 document that came out talking about remote viewing. I mean, I think the first time I heard about this was from Secure Team, and then I did some research, and I was pretty floored when I read the guy's description. So let's go ahead and check out in the bottom and see what they say here. By any ordinary standards, successfully sending humans to Mars would be an astonishing triumph, a world historical feat for the nation or corporation that manages to pull it off first. Talk to the right people, though, and you might be surprised to learn that more than 30 years ago, the US military accomplished just that. You'll find evidence in a document freely available to the public reading room section of the Central Intelligence Agency's website. So I'm going to go ahead and skip the dialogue and let's read what the subject says. I'm seeing, it's like a perception of a shadow of people, very tall, thin. It's only a shadow. It's as if they were there and they're not there anymore. Go back to a period of time where they are there. It's like I get a lot of static on a line and everything, it's breaking up all the time. Very fragmentary pieces. Just report the data. Don't try to put things together. Just report the raw data. I just keep seeing very large people. They appear thin and tall, but they're very large and wearing some kind of strange clothes. So this is actually what got my attention, is when the remote viewer described these Martians as very thin and tall, because that's literally exactly what I saw. And it's one of the things that stood out the most when I saw these beings, because they're humanoid for one, but then when you see this like very lanky, tall humanoid creature, it's something that you remember. So the conversation jumps around rapidly, and then as it says here in the bottom, as the subject does, he describes some of the sites of interest that he notices, including a large obelisk that reminds him of the Washington Monument, rounded bottom carved channels like roadbeds, and most strikingly, pyramids, like shelters from storms. In those structures, he finds the shadowy people he has seen before hibernating. They're an ancient people, he tells the monitor. They're dying. It's past their time or age. And this is another thing that really struck me, because what I saw personally was these creatures that were doing this weird ritual inside a pyramid. See, I always thought that the pyramid is supposed to be some kind of, like power plants, or that it served some kind of purpose. But when I actually went in that lucid dream state and I ended up going inside a pyramid and saw these creatures kind of just doing this very strange ritual where they're kind of walking in a circle and humming, it definitely struck as something that I wouldn't have really thought about, because like I said, pyramids I thought had different functionality, not a functionality of holding people, of containing people. That was very strange for me to see that. And it seems that this remote viewer saw the same thing. In fact, he talks about that they may have used the pyramids to shelter against these storms. Something I did see in my lucid view experience was that the floor was very, very dusty, almost sandy. Now, it did have like blocks, like actual stone blocks, but I didn't understand why. It's almost like I'm like, are these guys unkept? Or is there some purpose for the sand? Or maybe the sand came from the storms. I don't know. So it says here, the planet Mars, time of interest, approximately 1 million years BC. You know, I'm not an expert. I wouldn't know. I would think that it would have to be longer than that. But correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not certain about that. This, in other words, a purportedly real record of some real intelligence services attempt to visit another world through astral projection while examining its distant past. The transcript appeared on the CIA site as part of a large dump of documents related to the US government's experimentation with paranormal phenomenon projects that have been variously attributed with helping resolve the Iran hostage crisis and simply derided for wasting taxpayers' money. Now, many of you, I'm sure, have listened to Coast AM, and, I'm sure Dr. Doom, Ed Dames, might come to mind. He talked about how he used to be a remote viewer for the government. So I guess here they call it psychoenergetics, which is defined as the mental process of which an individual perceives, communicates, and or perturbs characteristics of a designated target, person, or event remote in space or time from that individual. So remote viewing, as it says in the bottom, that's the term. And we've done this. We've done this remote viewing. So now you see why I was doing that section where I had people guess what picture I had in the envelope. Because if the government has done this before and has actual documentation, there seems to be something there. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. I mean, some people theorize that maybe the government did it because they were competing against the Russians, and then the Russians had these fake psychic spies, and they're trying to kind of take away some resources of the US, but that doesn't even make sense because it wasn't even that much resource for the Stargate program. So I do think that they saw something there that was working, and specifically what I found interesting is it says in the bottom, an official 1995 report on the project concluded that its operational efficacy was minimal, since remote viewing reports fail to produce the concrete, specific information value in intelligence gathering. Now, if you did listen to Ed Dames from Coast to Coast AM, he talks about that the reason why, this is what they claim, but the reason why they stopped remote viewing is that it got too powerful. That these guys who wanted their information compartmentalized, well, suddenly these remote viewers were able to kind of see through the veil, so to speak, and that kind of destabilized their structure for keeping secrecy. So I think in a way, what they thought would be a weapon became a threat. So I'm going to spare you the rest of the article. There's not much else other than just background information about the Stargates. But I went ahead and pulled out this transcript. And I did want to preface that although this remote viewer talked about a skinny, long, tall creature that was inside a pyramid in Mars, which is basically exactly what I saw, there is one slight difference, and I need to point this out because I just want to be honest about things. I'm not here to exaggerate. So it says here, very tall, again, very large people, but they're thin. They look thin because of their height, and they dress like it's like a real light silk, but it's not flowing type of clothing. It's like cut to fit. Now, here's the difference. I did see a light, silky type of clothing, which I thought was very strange, and it was very dark. Like it was like dark gray, almost black, but kind of like this dark grayish. But what I saw was flowing, like a flowing garments. And I don't know, maybe they wear different garments for hibernation or for their whatever it is that they're doing at the pyramid. When I ended up seeing them, they're doing some kind of ritual. But I just needed to point out this difference because I don't want people to think that whatever clothes I saw was exactly the same just because we both said that the clothes looks different. All right, so now it's time for the drawings. So here's the deal, okay? I made these drawings months and months ago when I was telling the audience that I wanted to essentially make this episode about Martians. But as I was saying earlier, because I didn't get any other source other than my own lucid dream, I thought that I thought it was an experience, whatever it is I experienced, but I was worried about other people's perception. I was afraid that people would think that I was just bullshitting, that I was just trying to create nonsensical stuff just to create an episode. So unfortunately, I don't have this dated, but what I can go ahead and do is kind of show you the different pages that I had. So this is all the notes that I was taking when I was doing that pyramid episode. So you can see me calculating all the distances of the different sites around the world. And so if you go forward a little bit, here is me calculating how the pyramids encode the speed of light, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so then I have all these mathematical equations, right? And the next page, well, here it is. This is what I saw. It had a very long neck. It had this squashy type of nose, had these weird almond eyes, a little bit separated, a huge distance between the nose and the mouth. And then I kind of tried to make a more detailed drawing of it. And the only reason why I don't like this drawing is that it looks too humanoid. I think it looked more like this than this in terms of the general look of it. I think this nose is not right. It looks too humanoid. It's more squashy like this. But generally what I did see was something akin to this, where it has these little ear holes, had very weird black eyes, a little bit almond shaped, more like these. And I remember seeing these really, really long wrinkles, like these folds. I don't know how to describe it. They're just deep, deep folds. And everything was white. Their skin was completely white. And their hands, as you can see, had only 4 fingers. You can see me drawing all the little folds here. And here was my best, okay, it's a horrible drawing, but it was kind of trying to indicate the garment that they were wearing. It kind of, I hate to say it, it looks like a Snuggie a little bit, except it's short right here. It's possible they had tight clothes underneath this hooded thing, but that's just what I saw them wearing inside the pyramid. And as you see, I wrote 7 to 8 feet tall, very thin. And then I just drew a pyramid just to kind of indicate where it is that I saw this lucid dream. Now, I didn't date this. The reason why I'm showing you like this is to show you the sequence, like you see my bills. And so for me to have faked this, I would have literally had to write on my notebook, leave exactly 4 pages open, and then draw this afterwards and be like, yeah, I just made this up like way later. Like, of course not. I mean, you can believe what you want, but I just wanted to show you that although it's not dated, it has been in this notebook for a while. And it's only recently that I've learned about the remote viewer's experience of seeing something inside a pyramid that was long, thin, and yeah, God knows how else he saw it. But that's just how I saw it. And yeah, just wanted to share that, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, I wasn't planning on making this episode, but with this, if you want to think of it as a coincidence, after this coincidence happened, I went ahead and said, you know what? Screw it. I don't care if people think it's speculative. I'm just going to go ahead and put this out because, you know, it would have been better had I put it out earlier and then we encountered this information. Let's just put it this way. And just to celebrate the idea that they weren't just talking about remote viewers, but the fact that we actually had a remote viewing section previously in this episode, well, I kind of wanted to bring that back. So I'm going to have a remote viewing card for you set up today. The code is B071981X, and I've went ahead and I actually wrote those, if you want to call it coordinates, but it's actually just a code that you can anchor to. But this code is written in the picture itself, and it's going to be written in the envelope. And if you want to participate, go ahead and write RV column and your best guess. Well, I mean, technically it's not a guess, but well, I think you know what I'm talking about. And I'm actually going to have a secret prize if there is a winner. So I hope you participate. If you have any comments, any questions, if you think you also saw something about Martians, definitely leave your ideas down in the comment section. We are officially demonetized, so don't forget to share, ladies and gentlemen. This is Felipe speaking, signing out.